The first thing I noticed was the smell of fresh mulch. It hit me before I even turned off the engine of my truck. That thick, earthy, slightly sweet scent that doesn't belong on a dry September morning in a field of native grass. I sat there for a moment with my coffee cooling on the dashboard, staring through the windshield at something that should not have existed. A bright blue plastic slide rose out of the ground, like a misplaced carnival ride, surrounded by a sea of dark brown mulch, 2 wooden benches, and a set of toddler swings with yellow plastic seats. The grass I had walked 3 days ago was gone, smothered under a perfect circle of commercial playground equipment. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. A text from my neighbor, Elena, 2 houses down. "Did you approve the playground? Because there are kids on your property." I did not answer right away. I took a long breath, set my coffee down, and stepped out of the truck. The morning air was still cool, but the sun was already heating the metal slide, and I could hear the faint creak of the swing chains moving in the breeze. A laminated sign had been staked into the ground near the sidewalk. It read, in cheerful green letters, "Maple Ridge, HOA Family Playground. Grand opening Saturday, 10 a.m. The date was 3 days away. I had not been notified. I had not been asked. I had not signed anything. And the playground was sitting directly on top of my septic reserve field. I knew that because I had the county health map folded in the glove box of my truck, a document I had studied carefully when I bought this house 11 years ago. The field was not just an empty patch of grass. It was a recorded septic reserve area, a legally designated space required by the county health department for the future replacement of my drain field. You cannot build anything on it. Not a shed, not a patio, not a fence post, and certainly not a commercial-grade playground with mulch, benches, and a bright blue slide. The HOA president, a woman named Patricia Calloway, had decided it was unused green space. She was about to learn the difference between green space and a health code violation. But I did not know that yet. Not fully. At that moment, I was just a man standing in his own field, staring at a swing set, trying to understand how a group of adults could look at a piece of private property and see a public park. I pulled out my phone and took a picture. Then I took another. Then I walked the perimeter of the playground, counting the equipment, noting the depth of the mulch, the placement of the benches, the way the slide pointed toward the street like an invitation. I did not touch anything. I did not call anyone. I just stood there, letting the reality of it settle into my bones. The playground was large. It had been professionally installed. The mulch was fresh and deep, at least 8 inches. End serbs, spread in a perfect circle about 40 feet across. The equipment was anchored into the ground with concrete footings. Someone had paid real money for this. Someone had hired a crew. Someone had drawn up plans, and no one had thought to check the county records. That was the first mistake. The second mistake was putting it in writing. The laminated sign was still flapping in the breeze when I heard a car door slam behind me. I turned and saw a white Lexus SUV parked at the curb, the driver's side door still open, and Patricia Calloway walking toward me with a clipboard in one hand and a bright smile on her face. She was wearing a pale blue blouse, khaki capris, and spotless white sneakers. Her hair was short, silver, and perfectly styled. She looked like a woman who had never been told no in her life. "Good morning, Marcus," she said, using my first name like we were old friends. We were not. We had spoken exactly 4 times in 11 years, and 3 of those conversations had been about my fence. "I see you found our little surprise." She gestured toward the playground with her clipboard, like she was unveiling a new wing of a museum. The board voted last month to add a family-friendly amenity to the neighborhood. And this area was just sitting here unused. It's perfect, isn't it? The kids are going to love it. I looked at her, I looked at the playground, I looked back at her. "This is my property," I said. My voice was calm. I had learned a long time ago that volume does not equal authority. "This field is part of my lot. It's recorded with the county." Patricia's smile did not waver. She tilted her head slightly, the way you might tilt your head at a child who doesn't understand how the world works. "Oh, I know it's part of your parcel," she said, "but it's been unused green space for over a decade. The HOA covenants allow the board to repurpose unused common areas for community benefit, and this area has always been treated as common space." She said it with such certainty that for a moment I almost believed her. Almost. But I had read my deed. I had read the covenants. I had read the county health map. And I knew that Patricia Calloway had not read any of those things. "It's not common space," I said. "It's my septic reserve field." The word septic landed in the morning air like a stone in still water. Patricia's smile flickered, just for a second, a tiny crack in the polished surface. Then it returned, brighter than before. "I'm sure that's not an issue," she said. "The board consulted with our landscaping contractor, and he confirmed the ground was suitable for light recreational use. There's no septic system here now, is there?" "No," I said. "It's a reserve field, for future replacement. It's recorded with the county health department. You can't build anything on it." Patricia waved her clipboard dismissively. "Well, we'll sort that out. The grand opening is Saturday, and the children are already so excited. I'm sure we can work something out." She turned and walked back toward her Lexus before I could respond. I watched her drive away, the clipboard sitting on her passenger seat, the laminated sign still flapping in the breeze. Then I walked back to my truck, opened the glove box, and pulled out the county health map. The paper was crisp and official, stamped with the county seal, dated 11 years ago when I bought the house. It showed my property lines, my house, my existing drain field, and a large shaded rectangle labeled Septic Reserve Area. No structures permitted. The playground sat entirely inside that rectangle. Every swing, every bench, every square foot of mulch. I folded the map carefully and placed it on the passenger seat. Then I drove to the county health department. The building was a low, beige structure on the edge of town, the kind of place where the air conditioning hums too loud and the fluorescent lights flicker just enough to give you a headache. I walked in with the map in my hand and asked to speak with someone about a septic reserve violation. The woman at the front desk looked up at me with the weary expression of someone who has heard every possible complaint about every possible property issue. "Do you have an address?" she asked. I gave it to her. She typed it into her computer, frowned, typed again, and then looked up at me with a different expression. This one was more alert. "You said there's a structure on your reserve field?" "A playground," I said. "Swings, slide, benches, mulch, installed 3 days ago by the HOA. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she picked up her phone and dialed an extension. "Jerry," she said, "you're going to want to see this." Jerry was a county health inspector named Gerald Mays, a man in his late 50s with a gray mustache, steel-toed boots, and the calm, deliberate manner of someone who has spent decades dealing with septic systems and the people who ignore them. He came out to the front desk, shook my hand, and asked me to show him the map. I spread it on the counter. He studied it for a long moment, tracing the shaded rectangle with his finger. "This is your property?" he asked. "Yes." "And the HOA built a playground on it?" "Yes." "Without your permission?" "Yes." Jerry looked at me. Then he looked at the map. Then he looked back at me. "Well," he said, "that's a problem." He explained it to me in simple, clear terms. The kind of terms that would later become very important when Patricia Calloway tried to argue her way out of the mess she had created. A septic reserve field is not optional. It is required by county code for any property with an on-site sewage system. The reserve area must remain clear of all structures, paving, heavy equipment, and deep-rooted vegetation. The purpose is simple. If your existing drain field fails, you need a place to put the replacement. If the reserve field is compromised, you have no backup. If you have no backup, your septic system becomes a health hazard. And if your septic system becomes a health hazard, the county can condemn your property. "The playground has to come out," Jerry said. "All of it. The equipment, the mulch, the footings, and the soil underneath needs to be evaluated for compaction. If the heavy equipment they use damaged the soil structure, you might need remediation." He paused, then added, "And whoever installed it is responsible for the cost." I asked him to put that in writing. He did. 20 minutes later, I walked out of the health department with a formal notice of violation, addressed to the property owner, citing the specific county code sections that prohibited structures on septic reserve fields. The notice listed the required actions: immediate removal of all structures, soil evaluation by a licensed engineer, and restoration of the reserve area to its original condition. It also listed the potential penalties for non-compliance, fines of up to $500 per day, and possible condemnation of the property if the septic system failed due to reserve field damage. I made 3 copies of the notice, one for my files, one for my attorney, and one for Patricia Calloway. But I did not give it to her yet. I wanted to see how far she would go. The answer came 2 days later, on a Thursday afternoon, when I arrived home from work, to find a small crowd gathered on the sidewalk near the playground. Patricia was there, clipboard in hand, talking to a group of parents and young children. She was pointing at the swings, gesturing toward the slide, her voice carrying across the field with the practiced warmth of a politician at a ribbon-cutting ceremony. "And we'll have refreshments on Saturday," she was saying. "Lemonade, cookies, face painting for the kids. It's going to be a wonderful addition to the community." One of the parents, a young woman with a toddler on her hip, noticed me standing by my truck. She smiled and waved. "Are you coming to the grand opening?" she asked. "It's my property," I said. Her smile faded. Patricia turned at the sound of my voice. Her expression tightened, but she kept the smile in place. "Marcus," she said, "I was just telling everyone about the wonderful new playground. The board is so proud of this project." I walked toward her, past the parents, past the children, past the bright blue slide and the yellow swings. I stopped about 10 feet from her, close enough that she could see my face clearly, close enough that the parents could hear every word. "I need to show you something," I said. I handed her the county health notice. She took it with the same dismissive gesture she had used 2 days earlier, glancing at it like it was a flyer for a lost dog. Then she started reading. Her smile disappeared. Her face went pale. Her hand tightened on the clipboard. "This can't be right," she said. "It's right," I said. "The playground is on my septic reserve field. The county health department has issued a violation notice. The playground has to be removed immediately, and the soil has to be evaluated for damage. The HOA is responsible for all costs." The parents were staring now. The young woman with the toddler took a step back. One of the older children, a boy about 7, tugged on his mother's sleeve and asked why the man was angry. "I'm not angry," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm just informing the HOA president that she built a playground on a septic field, and that the county health inspector will be here on Saturday morning to inspect the site." Saturday morning, the grand opening. Patricia's face went from pale to red. "You called the health department," she demanded, "without discussing this with the board first? You built a playground on my property without discussing it with me first," I said. "I figured the health department was the appropriate next step," she sputtered. The clipboard was shaking in her hand. The parents were murmuring to each other, pulling their children closer, glancing at the playground with new eyes. The bright blue slide suddenly looked less like a fun amenity and more like a liability. "This is outrageous," Patricia said. "The board will fight this. We have attorneys." "I'm sure you do," I said. "You might want to call them, because the health inspector is bringing a copy of the county map, and the map shows exactly what I've been telling you. This field is not green space. It's a septic reserve, and you can't build a playground on it." I turned and walked back to my truck. Behind me, I heard Patricia's voice rising, trying to reassure the parents, trying to spin the situation, trying to regain control. But the damage was done. The word septic had been spoken, and no amount of lemonade and face painting was going to make parents want their children playing on top of a septic field. That evening, my phone started ringing. The first call was from a board member named Robert Chen, a retired accountant who had always seemed like the most reasonable person on the HOA board. He sounded tired and worried. "Marcus," he said, "I just heard about the health department notice. Is it true?" "It's true," I said. "The playground is on my septic reserve field. The county confirmed it this morning." There was a long pause. Then Robert said, "Patricia told the board the field was unused green space. She said she had checked the property records." "She didn't check the health records," I said. "The septic reserve is recorded with the county health department, not the property assessor. You have to look at a different map." Another long pause. "How much is this going to cost?" Robert asked. "I don't know yet," I said. "But the playground has to come out. The equipment, the mulch, the footings, and the soil needs to be evaluated by an engineer. If it's compacted, we might need remediation. That could run into the tens of thousands." Robert made a sound like someone had punched him in the stomach. "The board approved $15,000 for the playground," he said. "That was the entire amenity budget for the year." "Then you might need a special assessment," I said, "because the removal and restoration are going to cost more than that. And the HOA is legally responsible." The second call was from my plumber, a man named Dave who had installed my new drain field 6 years ago and knew the property better than anyone. He had heard about the playground from Elena, who had heard about it from another neighbor, who had heard about it from the parents at the sidewalk gathering. News travels fast in a subdivision. "Marcus," Dave said, "tell me they didn't put heavy equipment on your reserve field." "They did," I said. "There's a playground on it. Swings, slide, benches, mulch, concrete footings. Dave was silent for a moment. Then he said a word that I will not repeat here. "Do you know what compaction does to a reserve field?" he asked. "I have a general idea. It ruins it," Dave said. "The soil needs to be loose and permeable for a drain field to work. If they drove a skid steer over it, or compacted it with a roller, the soil structure is damaged. You can't just fluff it back up. You might need to excavate and replace the whole thing." "How much would that cost?" I asked. "For a field your size?" Dave said. 20, 30,000? Maybe more if they have to haul in new soil. I wrote that number down in the notebook I kept in my kitchen drawer. The notebook was already filling up with details. Dates, times, names, quotes, copies of emails, photographs of the playground, the county health notice, the text from Elena. I had learned a long time ago that paperwork is a form of patience, and patience is a form of power. The third call was from Patricia Calloway herself. She called at 8:47 p.m., which told me she had spent the evening trying to find a way out of the mess, and had failed. Her voice was different now. The polished warmth was gone, replaced by something sharper and more desperate. "Marcus," she said, "I think we got off on the wrong foot. The board is willing to work with you on this. We can move the playground to a different location. There's a common area near the retention pond that might work." "That's fine," I said. "Move it wherever you want, but you still have to remove it from my property and restore the reserve field. The county notice doesn't go away just because you relocate the equipment." "The county doesn't need to be involved," Patricia said. "We can handle this privately. The board can hire a contractor to move the equipment, and we can all move on." "The county is already involved," I said. "The health inspector is coming on Saturday. He's going to inspect the site and write a formal report. If the soil is damaged, the HOA is responsible for remediation. That's not negotiable." Patricia's voice tightened. "You're being unreasonable. This was an honest mistake. The board was trying to do something good for the community." "You built a playground on my property without my permission," I said. "You didn't check the county records. You didn't ask me. You just assumed the field was available because it looked empty. That's not an honest mistake. That's negligence." She hung up. I wrote down the time of the call and a summary of the conversation in my notebook. Then I went to bed. Saturday morning arrived with a bright, cloudless sky and a temperature that promised to climb into the high 80s by noon. The kind of day that would have been perfect for a playground grand opening. I was sitting on my front porch with a cup of coffee when the first car arrived. It was a minivan with a stick figure family decal on the back window. A young couple got out with two small children, a boy and a girl, both wearing matching t-shirts with cartoon dinosaurs on them. The children ran toward the playground, their parents following with smiles and a picnic blanket. Then they saw the yellow tape. I had put it up the night before, after consulting with the health department. Bright yellow caution tape stretched between metal stakes, encircling the entire playground. A sign attached to the tape read, "Closed by order of County Health Department. Septic Reserve Field. No trespassing." The young couple stopped. The children tugged at their parents' hands, confused. The mother read the sign, her face cycling through confusion, concern, and then something closer to anger. She pulled out her phone and started taking pictures. More cars arrived. A sedan with an older couple. An SUV with a family of 5. A pickup truck with a man in a Maple Ridge HOA polo shirt, who looked like he had been sent to manage the event. They all saw the yellow tape. They all read the sign. They all had the same reaction. Patricia Calloway arrived at 9:52 a.m. in her white Lexus, 8 minutes before the scheduled grand opening. She was wearing a bright floral dress and carrying a large wicker basket filled with juice boxes and packaged cookies. She saw the yellow tape, saw the sign, saw the small crowd of confused parents and disappointed children gathering on the sidewalk, and her face went through a series of expressions that I wish I had recorded. Shock, fury, humiliation, and then, finally, fear. Because parked behind my truck, in the driveway, was a white county vehicle with the health department logo on the door. Gerald Mays was already here. He had arrived at 9:30, clipboard in hand, and was now walking slowly around the perimeter of the playground, taking notes, snapping photographs, and occasionally kneeling to examine the mulch and the soil underneath. He was wearing a high-visibility vest and a grim expression. Patricia marched toward me, her wicker basket swinging, her floral dress flapping in the breeze. "What have you done?" she demanded. "I followed the law," I said. "You should try it sometime." She turned toward Gerald, her voice shifting into a higher, more frantic register. Sir, there's been a misunderstanding. This playground was approved by the HOA board. We had no idea there was a septic issue. We can work this out. Gerald looked up from his clipboard. His expression did not change. Ma'am, he said, are you the property owner? No, I'm the HOA president. The property owner is… She gestured toward me. Then I need to speak with the property owner, Gerald said. But you should know that this playground is in violation of County Health Code Section 14-203. It's sitting on a recorded septic reserve field. It needs to be removed immediately, and the soil needs to be evaluated for compaction. That depends on the damage, Gerald said. But I can tell you right now, this is a serious violation. The heavy equipment used to install the playground almost certainly compacted the soil. You're looking at excavation, soil replacement, and regrading. I'd estimate $30,000 to $50,000, minimum. $50,000. The number hung in the air like a physical object. Patricia swayed slightly. The wicker basket slipped from her hand and hit the ground. Juice boxes rolling across the grass. One of the children started crying. The young mother with the toddler, the one who had smiled at me 2 days earlier, was now staring at Patricia with undisguised contempt. You told us it was safe, she said. You told us the playground was approved and inspected. It was approved by the board, Patricia said weakly. The board didn't check the health records, I said. The board didn't check anything. They saw an empty field and decided it belonged to them. The crowd was growing. More neighbors had arrived, drawn by the commotion, the yellow tape, the county vehicle. Elena was there, standing near the back with her arms crossed, a small smile on her face. Robert Chen was there, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. The man in the HOA polo shirt was still on his phone, his voice low and urgent. Gerald continued his inspection, unbothered by the drama unfolding around him. He measured the depth of the mulch, photographed the concrete footings, and took soil samples from several locations. He wrote everything down on his clipboard, his pen moving steadily across the paper. Finally, he walked over to me and handed me a copy of his preliminary report. The soil is compacted, he said. I can confirm that right now. The heavy equipment compressed the top 12 to 18 inches. You're going to need a full remediation plan from a licensed engineer. I'll have the formal report ready by Monday. He turned to Patricia. The playground needs to be removed within 30 days. The soil remediation needs to be completed within 90 days. Failure to comply will result in daily fines and possible condemnation of the property. Patricia opened her mouth, but no words came out. She looked at the playground, at the yellow tape, at the crowd of angry parents, at the county inspector, at me. Her world was collapsing, and she had no one to blame but herself. The grand opening never happened. The parents took their children home. The man in the HOA polo shirt drove away. Patricia stood alone in the field for a long time, staring at the bright blue slide, the yellow swings, the wooden benches, the sea of dark mulch. Then she got in her Lexus and drove away. The playground sat empty for 3 weeks. The yellow tape stayed up. The sign stayed up. The county report arrived on Monday, as promised. A 12-page document detailing every violation, every code section, every required action. I sent a copy to the HOA board, to my attorney, and to my insurance company. The board held an emergency meeting. I was not invited, but Elena attended and told me everything. Patricia had tried to defend herself, claiming she had acted in good faith, claiming the field had always been treated as common space, claiming the board's landscaping contractor had assured her the ground was suitable. But the board members were not interested in her excuses. They were interested in the $50,000 liability she had created. Robert Chen asked the question everyone was thinking. Did you check the county records before you approved the playground? Patricia did not answer. The silence was answer enough. The board voted to remove Patricia from her position as family committee chair. They voted to hire an attorney to negotiate with the county health department. They voted to begin the process of removing the playground and restoring the reserve field. And they voted to send a letter to every resident in Maple Ridge, explaining what had happened and why the HOA's amenity budget was now completely depleted. The letter was 4 pages long. It did not mention Patricia by name, but everyone knew. The playground removal began on a Tuesday morning. A crew arrived with a flatbed truck, a skid steer, and a dumpster. They dismantled the swings, unbolted the slide, pulled up the benches, and scraped away the mulch. The concrete footings had to be jackhammered out of the ground. The whole process took 3 days. The soil remediation took longer. An engineer came out and conducted a full assessment. He confirmed what Gerald had already told me. The soil was compacted to a depth of 18 inches, and the entire reserve field would need to be excavated and replaced. The cost estimate came in at $47,000. The HOA's insurance company initially refused to cover it, citing the board's negligence. The board had to impose a special assessment on all residents to pay for the remediation. My neighbors were not happy. I received a dozen emails, a dozen phone calls, a dozen conversations over fences and driveways. Some people blamed me for calling the health department. Most people blamed Patricia. A few people thanked me. The young mother with the toddler stopped by my house one evening with a plate of cookies and an apology. "I had no idea," she said. "Patricia told us the playground was on HOA property. She said everything was approved." "She lied," I said. "Or she didn't bother to check. Either way, it wasn't your fault." The remediation work took 6 weeks. The crew excavated the compacted soil, hauled in new fill, graded the field, and planted native grass seed. By the time they were finished, the field looked exactly as it had before the playground arrived. A quiet rectangle of green, bordered by a split-rail fence, with no sign that anything had ever been built there. The total cost, including removal, remediation, legal fees, and county fines, came to just under $60,000. The HOA paid every cent. Patricia Calloway resigned from the board 2 months later. She sent an email to all residents, blaming the county, blaming the health department, blaming me, blaming everyone except herself. No one responded. She sold her house the following spring and moved to a different subdivision, one with a different HOA, where she could start fresh and make the same mistakes all over again. I still live in Maple Ridge. The septic reserve field is still there, quiet and green, doing exactly what it was designed to do. Nothing. It sits empty, waiting for the day when my drain field fails and I need a replacement. That day may never come, but if it does, the field will be ready. Because I read the map, I kept the records, I made the calls, and I let the paperwork do what paperwork does best: tell the truth. Some people think authority comes from being loud, from having a clipboard, from driving a white Lexus and wearing a floral dress and telling people what to do. But real authority is quieter than that. It lives in county records and health codes and recorded deeds. It lives in the patience to wait, to document, to let the other person make the first mistake, the second mistake, the third mistake, until the weight of their own errors becomes too heavy to carry. Patricia Calloway thought she was building a playground. She was actually building a case against herself. And all I had to do was let her. The field is quiet now. The grass is growing. The fence is straight. The county file is closed. And every time I walk past that rectangle of green, I remember the smell of fresh mulch on a dry September morning. And I smile. Not because I won, because I never had to fight. I just had to wait. And the map did the rest.